There's a moment in history rare, easy to miss when the thing everyone is watching on the news isn't actually the thing that matters. Right now, we might be living through one of those moments. The cameras are fixed on missile trails and burning buildings. Politicians are giving speeches. Analysts are counting casualties. But underneath all of that noise, something structural is shifting. Something that, if it breaks, will reshape how this entire world is organized economically and politically, and almost nobody in the mainstream. Conversation is talking about it directly. So let's talk about it. To understand what's actually happening between Iran and Israel, you have to first understand something about how American power actually works, not the version taught in textbooks, but the real mechanical version. After World War II, the United States did something extraordinarily clever. It didn't just build the world's most powerful military. It built a financial architecture around that military. Specifically, it made oil the single most essential commodity on the planet, tradable only in US dollars. Think about the elegance of that arrangement. Every nation on Earth needs energy. Every economy, every factory, every cargo ship, every military runs on oil. If all of that oil can only be purchased in dollars, then every country on Earth must hold dollars, permanently, constantly. That creates an artificial global demand for American currency that has nothing to do with American productivity or American exports. It means the US can print money at a scale no other country can match without immediately destroying its own economy. It means America can borrow cheaply, spend enormously, and maintain a military presence in dozens of countries simultaneously, all funded, in part, by the rest of the world simply because they need to buy fuel. This system has a name, the Petrodollar, and it was cemented through a very specific deal. Gulf states sell oil in dollars, and in return, America guarantees their security. That deal is now under direct attack. Look at a map. The Persian Gulf is surrounded by countries that are the physical backbone of this entire financial system: Saudi Arabia, the way, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. These aren't just oil producers, they are nodes. They are the points through which petrodollar wealth flows outward into global markets, international investments, and Western financial institutions. Dubai, for example, didn't become one of the world's most important financial cities because of natural resources. It became that because wealthy people and corporations believed it was safe, stable, and protected. That belief was backed by American military power. Remove the belief, and you remove the entire economic model. What Iran appears to understand and what makes its strategy genuinely sophisticated is that you don't need to defeat America militarily to weaken it strategically. You need to erode the confidence in the system it built. You need to make investors nervous. You need to make capital question whether the Gulf is still the reliable, protected environment it once was. This is not a war being fought purely with weapons. It's being fought with uncertainty. Now consider the geography, because it matters enormously here. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow channel of water in places barely 30 kilometers wide, through which roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply travels every single day. Japanese factories, Indian refineries, South Korean power grids, Chinese manufacturing, all of it depends on tankers passing safely through that choke point. Iran sits directly alongside it, on terrain that is mountainous, rugged, and naturally fortified. Missile systems, drone launch facilities, radar installations, all of it can be embedded into mountain ranges that are extraordinarily difficult to target from the air. Meanwhile, the Gulf states on the other side sit on flat desert. Their infrastructure, desalination plants, oil terminals, power facilities is spread across open land, visible, fixed, and exposed. Geography has given Iran something unusual: the ability to threaten offensive strikes while maintaining a naturally defensive position. That asymmetry shapes every calculation being made in this conflict. And then there's the economics of the weapons themselves, which almost never gets the attention it deserves. The entire Cold War logic of American military power was built around technological dominance. Build the most advanced, most sophisticated, most expensive systems, and no adversary could match you. That logic made sense in a world of superpower competition, but it created a military doctrine with a structural vulnerability. Here's the problem stated as simply as possible. A drone that costs $50,000 forces a response from an interceptor missile that costs several $1 million. When you fire 11 interceptors at a single incoming target, which has already happened in this conflict, the math becomes a slow-motion financial hemorrhage for the defender. The attacker manufactures cheap, the defender consumes expensive. Multiply that exchange across hundreds of engagements, and you're not just fighting a military war, you're draining the treasury of the most powerful nation on Earth, one intercept at a time. Iran cannot match American or Israeli military technology. It doesn't need to. It needs to make the cost of defending against it unsustainable. And in that narrow economic calculation, the strategy is working. But the most underappreciated vulnerability in this entire conflict isn't military, it's water. Enormous Gulf cities built in one of the most arid environments on the planet survive because of desalination infrastructure. These plants pull seawater in, strip the salt out, and provide drinking water to millions of people. In some countries, these facilities supply the majority of the entire population's water needs. They are fixed locations. They cannot be relocated. They require constant power and continuous operation, and they sit inside a war zone. A successful strike against desalination infrastructure isn't just an attack on a building. It's an attack on the biological survival of an urban population. The economic and psychological consequences of even a temporary disruption would be staggering. Businesses flee, families evacuate, capital follows people, and the entire narrative of Gulf stability, the narrative that makes these economies function, begins to collapse. This is the logic of modern economic warfare. You don't have to destroy everything permanently. You only have to make people believe it might not be safe. Because in a financial system built on confidence, the perception of danger is nearly as powerful as the danger itself. There's a concept in strategic theory sometimes called the game of chicken. Two vehicles accelerating toward each other. Whoever swerves loses. If neither swerves, both are destroyed. The entire logic depends on each side believing the other will eventually blink. That's roughly where this conflict is right now. Both sides possess the ability to cause severe economic damage to the other. Both sides are calculating how far they can push before the other responds catastrophically. And both sides are making those calculations under pressure, with imperfect information, surrounded by allies with their own agendas pushing for escalation. The danger in that situation isn't that someone decides to escalate. The danger is that someone miscalculates, believes the other side will step back, pushes one increment further, and discovers too late that the other side wasn't stepping back at all. Here's where the long arc of this becomes genuinely historic. If the petrodollar system begins to fracture, if oil-producing nations start exploring transactions in other currencies, if Gulf capital begins routing around us linked financial networks, if Asian economies accelerate bilateral energy deals that bypass the dollar entirely, the United States doesn't just lose a war, it loses the financial architecture that has funded its global influence for 50 years. That wouldn't happen overnight. Systems this large don't collapse in a single moment. They erode. They shift gradually until one day the center of gravity has moved and everyone realizes the old order is already gone. We may be watching the early stages of that erosion right now. The question worth sitting with isn't whether Iran defeats Israel or whether America maintains its military presence in the Gulf. The real question is whether the economic system underneath all of this survives the pressure being applied to it, and what the world looks like if it doesn't. History tends to answer that question slowly. Then all at once,